Hello, YouTube friends, and possibly BitChute friends as well. I may upload this on BitChute. These are some thoughts on the commission that has been set up to determine whether or not Trudeau, Canada's Prime Minister, had the right, the legal right, to invoke the most extreme measure, the most extreme action against the citizens of the country. This commission is supposed to determine whether or not it was correct for the Prime Minister to invoke the Emergency Act. Now, I am monitoring somewhat. I'm not listening to everybody because there's so much hooey. And my overall sense of this commission so far is, as I listen to the questions and the people answering, it almost feels like, and this was anticipated, I think, that the people on trial are the ones called the convoy organizers. The convoy itself is perceived to be on trial in all the questions that are being asked, when it should really be, was it legal and right for the Prime Minister to invoke, the government to invoke this act, which is, as some have referred to, the nuclear option of all rules and regulations, that if no other rules and regulations work, you invoke this act. We're about to fall off the precipice of existence in this country, and you have to rally the troops in order to defend ourselves against the most vicious attacks that could possibly occur. This is the Emergency Act. Now, I'm monitoring this on a channel called, what does he call him? War Campaign. I kind of like these guys. He's, I think, East Indian. He's got a terrific beard, and he strokes his beard a lot, and he braids it a lot, and it's quite an interesting, an elegant portrait that he has. And I commented. I said, this was something, and he's making commentary that some of it makes a lot of sense to me, because he also understands that there is, it feels like a very one-sided position that is already shaping up in this commission. The convoy is on trial, basically. So my comment was, he had said something about, it's all about the money now. The commission is being started off because it's all about the money, and I disagree with that. Obviously, money is always an issue, but for the owners, money has never been an issue. They have all the money they could possibly ever want. So money is just a vehicle, a tool, in order to seduce, subjugate the minions that work on behalf of the owners, willingly or coercively, in whatever form. Money does help. But I don't think this commission is about the money, although it may appear to him that way. I think from my perspective, this commission is going to sanitize in some form. This is my prediction, that the convoy was so egregiously an opposition that presented itself with such threats against the current government that it had to be invoked. I hope I'm wrong, but my thoughts are, I'm very pessimistic. But more importantly, if I had this conviction as an outsider looking on, this is the comment I made to the War Campaign fellows. I said, we're between a rock and a hard place when it comes to Caesar, since he provides us with the problem and the solution, as long as we are in his orbit. And what I mean by this is that Caesar obviously is our government, the current government in whichever form, whether it's provincial or federal. And the interesting thing is, we're confined within the format of what we understand to be our system of governance, and even our society, civil society, extends way beyond rules even. It extends into perceptions. The psyche that we are attached into is fundamentally that of Caesar on all levels. And well, of course, you know, Caesar was the ultimate tyrant. I suppose I'm making a reference here that governments on this level of behavior become tyrannical. And I think the invocation of this act confirms that it was a tyrannical move. It was not necessary based on all the commentary that is being exposed in this commission. It's pathetic how they're at each other's throats. They can't function. The police, the administrators, the people that are supposed to have things under control don't like each other, and they're infighting and they hate each other. And now they're trying to paint the protesters as people. Oh, look at that. They're all disliking each other. They can't get along. Well, they don't even have any rules of getting along, whereas the authorities are full of rules and regulations of how to get along, and they can't get along. So the idea of protesters maybe not being quite coordinated, why should they have been? It's people protesting, exercising their legal right to express themselves peacefully. This comes up over and over. I love this. Tamara Lich was being interviewed, and she said this several times, and others said the same thing. So here's my point, that the idea of this commission is in itself contrary to the purpose that we're attempting to establish, because Caesar underlies the entire procedure. It's the rules and the regulations. The problem is Caesar, and the solution is Caesar. So there's a conflict, obviously, here, if it's the best way I can explain it. So as long as we're in his orbit, this is going to be basically, it's impossible to resolve anything with this commission. To escape Caesar or his event horizon would literally mean to die. It sounds brutal, but the only way you get rid of Caesar is to die, and that's for most of us, maybe not all of us. And even then, he tells us how we must be disposed of. It's not just like you die and whatever you decide to do. No, there's many rules and regulations. Caesar has decrees on that. Now, War Campaign brought up an interesting woman. She was a doctor who refused to release her medical records on the unvaccinated that she was giving, or rather on the, I think she gave exemptions on masking. And they decided to break her head over not giving them the information on the people that she gave exemptions to, and she refused. She just refused, and they backed down. Fabulous. This woman was, there you go. Here's someone who's outside of Caesar's orbit, even though she still lives in the within the confines of Caesar's camp. She was quite magnificent, as this War Campaign fellow commented. The commission and all its participants are actors who merely confirm Caesar's supremacy. Now, it's not faulting for example, the convoy people, that they're all actors in this. It's inevitable. It's the nature, it's how our society is structured, is we don't have freedom in that sense. We don't have independence. We don't have that level of conscience that would make everything work. That part in us has been obliterated. I think I mentioned this. And the only escape, I say in this, is to live in conscience. The thing, Caesar, he and his minions, have almost totally crushed in most people at this time. And I said, I appreciate your insights to the fellow. So I want to keep. What do I want to do? I want to be able to create some context that makes sense to people who are following this. And I have to say that it's very troubling and moving at the same time when I was listening to the testimony that Tamara Lich was giving. And I haven't heard the cross-examinations yet. I'm catching up. The torture, the level of torture that she was submitted and that she was exposed to by the bastards. The owners have tortured this woman. And it's very clear now, if there's any dry eye left in the audience on this theater, it's anyone who is not affected and moved by her testimony might as well just jump off the cliff because you don't have a conscience. This is like, there is no point in trying to have a discussion with anyone that doesn't realize this is so wrong. This is so fundamentally wrong. The procedure, she was actually not convicted of anything. She was thrown in jail and then thrown in jail again on the procedures that were not being fulfilled as far as Caesar was concerned. Caesar was unable to legally put her in jail, so they created procedures that would make it legal. There's nothing that they have proven she has done, as far as I know, that actually would cause her to be incarcerated. And the absolute, it is a form of torture. Listening to this woman talk, it is so painful to hear how we live in a system that can fundamentally, I'm not surprised because, like I say, the system that we're in, the level of Caesarship that we are in is extensive and complete. And how do we escape that event horizon? Once we're caught in their headlights, there's going to be, on all levels, minions will be recruited to be able to subjugate anyone that steps out of line. And this woman stepped out of line from the point of view is that you're not allowed to disagree. This is quite obvious now. When people, now I have to say, I have to admit, anyone that doesn't realize this is a national movement. This is not just a few people getting together and say, hey, we don't like what happened. This is actually a national movement. This is not any longer just some dissent among a few people. The support, I think this has come out quite clearly, especially with the fundraising part, what has been shown to be the millions and millions of dollars. And for every person that donated, there are probably 5 or 10 others that at least, okay, let's say even twice as many or 5 times as many people who feel the same way, just didn't bother or couldn't afford to or whatever. So if we're talking about, let's say, 1 million people that donated, there is at least 5 or maybe 10 million people that feel the same way. So how can a person not come to the conclusion this is more than just someone having a difference of opinion? This is something quite powerful in terms of the sentiment, the psyche that is going against Caesar. And Caesar has his procedures in place to even deal with people who are outside the system. Like I really saw this movement as being totally outside the system, considering most people go along to get along, but they were fed up and said, we're going to resist what is going on. So my commentary is, I'm agreeing with War Campaign that there is a whole lot of theater going on, and the people that are that have been designated to be in the crosshairs on both sides, and the antagonism from some of these lawyers is extraordinary. And it's not a commission of revealing, it's people permitted to exercise their antagonism towards someone they don't like. And this is, as far as I'm concerned, this is outrageous and it shouldn't be this way. But again, I'm going back to the fact that the structure itself is in Caesar's orbit. And the only way to be outside of that orbit is to act one's conscience, which is, regardless of morality and things written on stone tablets, we don't need that stuff if the conscience is functioning. We don't need the rules and the regulations. And I understand that there are nuances and fine points about existing with each other that we might be occasionally reminded of that would help certain people. But fundamentally, when it gets down to the nature of our beings, we don't need anyone to tell us what's right and wrong. And Caesar makes a point of having libraries and libraries of ordinances and decrees that tell us when we're wrong, or even tells us how to be right, like in compelled speech. Caesar has now decided to tell us how to be right and correct in speech. I mean, everything is turning upside down. So my commentary is I was quite moved and affected by this woman's commentary, and I'd had some uh, trepidation about the idea of becoming known as a leader of a movement, but I think it's inevitable. People that have a strong moral compass will always be looked up to. And I think she has a very strong moral compass. I don't think she is uh, in any way intellectually superior or anything. She's an ordinary person, but she's extraordinary from the point of view of a conscience. And she probably didn't even know it. This is the other guys who are involved are a little more troublesome, like this Bowder guy and Pat King and who else was there? Dichter and Morazzo. I mean, all these individuals to me have have good qualities and have some weaknesses that present themselves. I think they're good people. Like I'm talking about the convoy side of things. The other guys are just Caesar's minions who disagree with each other too. They're like, they're going to be thrown under the bus. Caesar doesn't really give a shit about his minions either. When they're no longer useful, they're just discarded. So I'm not really focused or concerned about these people. And I mean, the commission should be about those guys who broke heads. I mean, this is what the commission should be really researching, but they just give them soft questions and stuff and let them fight amongst each other. And then let's focus on the convoy guys, right? Let's make those guys the object of this inquiry. But they're not the object of the inquiry. It's the government that has to be held accountable, whether or not they had the right to invoke this nuclear version of laws that exist in extreme circumstances, ultra extreme circumstances. We're about to end as a country, and we gotta figure out a way to save ourselves. So to finish it off, my point is that this person out of the entire group is outside of, in some form for me, has escaped Caesar's event horizon. But she is suffering and she's being tortured for being outside Caesar's orbit. I think she's establishing something that's very important. Whether she knows it or not, this is something I think other people around her have come to understand, that this is a very noble soul who's been able to rise above. Now, rise above, not in the sense that she's suffering, but rise above in terms of her example and in terms of inspiring other people. This is quite obvious. She was one of the front people for this protest, and millions of people rallied around her. And it's not like, oh yeah, I wanted to be. Were you the leader? Did we get the right person? Do we nail you up on the cross? What do we do with you now? Well, it's not dissimilar. It's not dissimilar, but phenomenal character. I think she's gorgeous. She's beautiful. I really appreciate just her entire being on this chair. It's the first highlight in this theater that's being presented to us. She was just phenomenal. Anyway. What can I say? I love this. I love this woman, the way she presented herself, and the the psyche, her ability, whether she knows it or not, she escaped Caesar's event horizon, and she's a danger. She's a problem. They're not going to let go of her because they're going to have to get Pontius Pilate to come in, and he's sitting there right now, and Pontius Pilate is. I'm hopeful that there is some moral compass here, not just procedural stuff. But we'll find out in February. I think the guy makes a decision in February whether or not anybody gets crucified, and I know who needs to be crucified in this, because all the evidence is clear. The evidence is stunningly, overwhelmingly clear that there was no such thing as an insurrection or any kind of threat to the well-being of this country in any form whatsoever. In fact, the well-being of this country has been threatened by actions that were instigated not by by this convoy. My thoughts.